All right, let's go. We are live. This is episode number 19 of Savages in the Bronx, live from Studio 54 in New Jersey and REM Studio in Staten Island, New York, airing exclusively on Twitch and powered by StreamYard. And welcome back to the show on this Monday, August the 2nd, 2021. I'm your host, Rich Rivera, and I'm being joined by a fan of Italian baseball players, Tom Wospil.
Italian food, Italian baseball players, not Italian co-hosts.
Well, fuck you, man. Get the fuck off my show. What the hell are you talking about?
Your show.
Yeah. The hell? I mean, I control the hoverboard here, so this is my show.
I guess.
So
I guess
can
so.
hunt you just like that. See, watch. I can kick you from.
Oh, he thought he kicked him. He thought he kicked me from the show, but he kicked himself from the show. How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
Let's just get this going. Welcome back to the show, Savages in the Bronx. We are past the trade deadline now. It was a wild one at that I fully covered on leading off before, but the Yankees, I thought, did pretty well, Tom. We did three editions of Savages in the Bronx last week to cover all the trades. So what was your overall score of these Yankees? If you had to give them a letter grade.
For the trades?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you got to give them a solid, like an A-. The big thing we talked about throughout the season is how they had no lefty bats, and they went out and got two of the best lefty bats they could. I'd have to think who are the lefty bats that got traded at the deadline. But these might be the two best ones off the top of my head, which is not really saying much, but definitely absolutely two of the best ones you could have gotten. We would have liked to see them if they could have addressed the pitching a little bit more. We know they tried to trade Voit and they didn't, which is always an awkward situation because now Luke Voit knows that he's going to be gone. So he's going to be possibly kind of checked out, which is unfortunate. But we'll see. I guess if the trade wasn't the right trade wasn't there for him, the right trade wasn't there. But yeah, I think an A-. What about you?
Yeah, and I could agree with that. I what did I give him on the show? I gave him a B+. Yeah, so B+, A- in that same realm. I think it makes sense. I think for what they did to try to stay in it this year and to also set them up for 2022, I thought they did a good job. You mentioned on our extra innings episode when the Yankees had made the trade for Rizzo, this could be a tryout for Rizzo. If, see how we feel with the guy, how he likes New York, maybe you could see out a contract in the offseason. That's if they're not planning on moving Gleyber Torres out of shortstop. Obviously, if the plan is to move Gleyber Torres to second base, then DJ LeMahieu would be the first baseman of this team, and they'll go out and get a shortstop. So there goes the whole Rizzo re-signing. But Joey Gallo you have for 2022. Andrew Heaney, who gave up 2 home runs to the Orioles, I believe they have for another year of control. I don't think he's a free agent at the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he might be a free agent, but that is just me trying to remember listening to the K show this afternoon. Don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, you're right. He is a free agent at the end of the year, so ignore what I just said. But yes, they make an under-the-radar move in Andrew Heaney, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But yeah, I thought they did a decent job. I think, you said pitching. I think, honestly, one area I wish they would have addressed if they're going to stick with offense is to get more of that contact bat. Now, not a lot of them went in this past trade deadline. You saw Adam Frazier go early to the Padres, Trey Turner in a stunning deal going to the Los Angeles Dodgers.
My love of Trey Turner.
Contact bat, lefty in that. Somebody just to switch up the formula of this team would have been great. But again, I think overall they did a decent job, but we'll get into some of their trade deadline moves later on tonight with our special guest who will be joining us in a few minutes. But we start off our show with The Bronx is Burning, as always. We did mention Andrew Heaney. We didn't have a show for Andrew Heaney, so we'll cover him now. Andrew Heaney being acquired by the Angels for Elvis Peguero and Jansen Junk, currently on the mound in Baltimore. Jansen, what a pitcher name. What a fantastic pitcher.
You gotta I know zero about Jansen Junk, but he better just have a couple curves, a circle change, a slider, just no fastballs. He just only throws junk.
Yes.
Or he just grabs his junk after like a big strikeout. Or both.
I love nice showboating in baseball. And like, that's like, you strike out the side, you grab your set as you walk off the mound. I think that's a great way to walk off the bump. So Jansen Junk, Ellis Rivera going to LA. So Andrew Heaney on the mound right now. Entered the game with a 5.27 ERA. Obviously, that's now a little bit higher now. After giving up 2 runs, but under radar move for the Yankees. A guy who generates, 6, 7, 8 strikeouts a game. Once highly touted in the Marlins system, and then if you remember, he was flipped to the Dodgers and then immediately traded to the Angels. And just never even debuted as a Dodger. I think it was he was traded for Howie Kendrick. So this is a long time ago now. But Heaney, 30 years old, left-handed starter, will complement that rotation, which is now given a vacancy in our next news piece with Domingo Germán landing on the IL with right shoulder inflammation. So Heaney already stepping into that role. And our favorite Yankee pitcher, Nestor Cortez, keeps his spot in the 5 spot in the rotation.
He sure does. We'll see really what's going on with Domingo Germán. Again, because I was home today, listened to a lot of the K show. K was even kind of hinting at it could be a phantom DL stint for Germán, like a planned injury. We'll just get him some rest. He had pitched deep into the game in Boston when he was going for the no-hitter. He had thrown a lot more pitches than he had recently. And then I pitched well again over the weekend. And it could have just been like, let's just get this guy some break. We just got Heaney. Let's give him 10 days off. So we'll see. Obviously it could be worse.
Initially, I thought he might have hurt himself taking a swing on Sunday, which was fun to watch, by the way. It was the Sunday game he was pitching, whatever the game he was pitching in. It was fun to watch just because, pitchers should not be swinging bats in National League ball. But yeah, that's another argument for another day. But Domingo Germán, yes, landing on the IL, right shoulder inflammation. Albert Abreu recalled in his spot. So quick notes. Not much going on in Yankee land outside of the trades that happened. Of course, we're going to get into more in a little bit. And if you hadn't heard already, we did have a couple extra innings episode this past week. We actually had 2. So we had 3 episodes of Savages in the Bronx in the last week, which was fucking crazy. So you can check out those episodes on Twitch. They'll be uploaded to YouTube at a later date. But yes, they're up on Twitch. So you can go check them out right there. But you can also follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Savages Bronx. You can follow Tom at
Wospil 54.
And you can follow me at Rich J. Rivera. And I mentioned YouTube before, so I'll throw it out there as well. Follow us on YouTube or subscribe to us on YouTube. That's what they say. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You like, subscribe, and share, and tell all your friends to go check out our old episodes on our YouTube page. But let's get into our special guest for tonight. He is our +1 for the very first time on our show, but he's very familiar to the Monday night podcast schedule here on StreamYard and Twitch. A recurring guest of Leading Off, but the former co-host of Staten Island Joe and Franick Show on 90.7 WCLH FM in Scranton Wilkes-Barre. You can follow him on Twitter at JR Pugs. He's a huge baseball fan, huge Met fan. I don't know who allowed the Met fan on the show, but he is a huge baseball. We'll ignore that. He's a huge baseball fan, so we're happy to talk trade deadline with our guest. And on top of all of that, he's a soon-to-be married man. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Pugliese joins us on Savages in the Bronx. What's up, Joe?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
What's going on, man?
Tom, good to meet you finally. I'm usually staring at Espo's pretty face, so
he does have a pretty face. He has a very he's a nice tall drink of water. That Espo is,
and not the most pretty opinions, but we'll leave that.
Well, I mean, listen, I think we could probably almost do like sometimes I just I comment into the chat on that show. I think we need to do like what the hell is a Skip Bayless and Stephen A. stupid show? First take. Yeah, I think we can do that rich hosting and just me yelling at Espo for Espo's bad takes.
Yeah.
Pete Alonso just went deep. Look at that. Awesome.
Here we go. The Mets. All right. Well, Espo, by the way, had his pick of the day today, and of course, Espo has been historically wrong with his pick of the day,
Oh.
which is hilarious.
And what was that?
It's the 7.5 for the over 7.5 for the Marlins Mets game, which is currently 4-2. So he's looking pretty good right now. So he's only got a couple runs
now. So
and he's gonna have his first win. So
he took a real. At least he took a real bet. I think 2 weeks ago he lost, but he took the. I think he took the White Sox like over the Royals.
Yeah,
like,
and he still lost.
What a courageous bet that is.
Yeah,
I'm going to take the White Sox minus 220.
And the funny part is he actually tries. But we're not here to roast on Espo. We're here to introduce Pugga to I called him Pugga because I just known him for so long. But we are introducing Joe to Savages in the Bronx for the first time. But obviously, we want to talk a little bit about this trade deadline. And we can get into the Yankees side of it. But what were some of your takeaways from this trade deadline? You're a huge Met fan. Javier Baez, big acquisition for the team. So what was some of your takeaways of the deadline as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think one thing that MLB did right was get rid of the kind of convoluted rules behind the waiver system that would bring us to August. It always seemed like the trade deadline was not a real deadline and that you could make deals after the fact. And I just think that at the end of the day, MLB did the right thing here. It was absolutely the craziest deadline I've ever seen. I don't remember this many big blockbuster trades happen in this close. It was almost a week of trade deadline where you were glued to Twitter the entire time. So I think first and foremost, MLB did a great job. That should continue forever. You shouldn't be able to make a trade if you're a playoff team on September 1st with a month to go and land somebody on a team that just decided to quit, pop somebody on waivers, and you get all of a sudden a star for 1 month. So I really think they did a good job here, and it was wild. I mean, this was great for the sport. You saw so many big names change hands. You saw one team in particular in the Cubs completely deconstruct their roster into a complete fire sale. And they had 3 of the biggest stars. I mean, it was wild, and they went to 3 different places that could use them, and I think are going to be significant factors heading down the stretch run.
And they all hit home runs in their first game with their new teams.
That's
pretty insane. Yeah, it definitely was crazy. There was it was the perfect setup to be crazy with the Cubs having the 3 hitters, but then including Kimbrel, although Kimbrel not a true rental. They had guys that were just expiring contracts ready to go. Nationals had the same. You had your typical sellers kind of thrown in there. Just the normal bad teams, your Marlins, your Pirates. But it was a lot of fun. It really was. It was every minute. It was like, oh, this guy happened here. This is happening there. I felt bad for Jeff Passan and co. Their fingers just tweeting it out must have been getting a real workout.
My fingers were fucking getting a real workout just trying to swipe up and update my Twitter feed. I mean, it was nuts. And you got to say, like, that job has got to be so cool to just be a beat reporter during the trade deadline or the winter meetings. But yes, great day to be Jeff Passan or John Heyman. Horrible day to be Bob Nightingale, who's historically just wrong on everything he says.
Got tricked by Jeff Passan, right? Was Nightingale got tricked?
Yes, he got tricked by the fake Jeff Passan.
4 Fs.
Was going to the Yankees. So, good for Bob Nightingale. We love to see it. But yes, it was a wild deadline. Now we did stress on some winners there, but who was a big loser of this MLB trade deadline, Joe? Who was maybe more inactive than they should have been, or maybe just made some like weird moves at the deadline?
I think there's 2 teams, and it's hard to call the Padres a loser when they add in basically an all-star super utility man in Frazier, but almost was forgotten by the end of the trade deadline that had happened. It happened earlier in the week, but for the only day of trade to be Marisnick, I think was a little bit puzzling for a team that needs pitching. Lamet's constantly hurt. Paddock just went on the IL. Darvish hasn't been the same in the stretch run. So I think that was the problem, and they're already in a hole. They have two teams that are ahead of them that clearly made significant upgrades and that are frankly better teams than them right now. And not to mention Tatis just got hurt. So I think the Padres were probably the biggest loser, if not for the lack of moves or the lack of talent, but just for the fact that the two teams that they're chasing got significantly better. And the Dodgers is a whole nother discussion, what they did. But I would say that they're probably the big one. And then I would go with, out West. I would just say the whole AL West as a whole. Like, what move was done out of the top three teams? I mean, you had, I guess the A's were the best in terms of acquisitions, or Houston, but I don't really see the significant move that really changes the landscape of that division. So I guess the Astros are in theory the winner there, because I don't see the A's or the Mariners or even the Angels getting any significantly better to chase them down. So I would kind of call all three of those teams in that division losers in that case.
Yeah, the Padres definitely taken the big hit with the idea that they had Scherzer. It seemed like a done deal, and not only did I get him, but he goes to the Dodgers. That's a double loss.
And the Dodgers to come away with just a fantastic player in Trey Turner.
Yeah.
I mean, that team. And before we get into anything else, something's got to happen here, because their payroll for the year now is $290+ million. I mean, they're outspending the Yankees by $100 million. So I don't know what's going to happen here. It's bordering on the level of ridiculousness, and not to mention the fact that there's still 3 games back of the division somehow. But I don't know what MLB is going to do here. But they are bringing it to another level, and I can't see how this is allowed to continue, because they're turning the league into a joke.
I mean, I would say they should be allowed to do what they're doing. They're getting taxed 50 cents on the dollar on it. Mm-hmm. They got to start putting a spending minimum on these teams. The NHL has it. All that tax, the tax money, whatever, goes to those teams, goes to the Rays, goes to the A's, goes to the teams that don't spend anything. They got to start spending that money, or they should lose it, and then they give it to charity or something. I don't know, but it's right. If the Dodgers if they're $100 million over the threshold, they've given $50 million to the other teams in money to spend for players, that then the Rays will say we can't afford. I know they're trying to trade Kiermaier because they're paying him $11 million. It's we can't afford him. It's get the hell out of here. Yes, you can. So I think that would fix a lot of it, because then some of the players could get signed elsewhere. The Dodgers couldn't just eat it up, because the Dodgers are just happy to do it. Teams like the Yankees have in the past, the Red Sox have in the past, the Cubs have. That's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, it's crazy, because the Yankees were always the high spender, but they always had somebody near them, whether it was them and the Red Sox pushing each other, whether it was the Mets creeping up there for a few years, or the Dodgers creeping up there. They always had somebody pushing them. But the Dodgers have brought it to the next level, where they're so much higher than the next tier of teams. This is beyond the Yankees just buying, go out and buying Giambi or Teixeira or CC or whoever it was. Mm-hmm. We're getting everybody. I mean, they have 8 Cy Youngs on their team. That's crazy. So, and I know they're going to lose a couple in free agency, but that's probably a leading off topic somewhere down the road. But I know we're on the.
You know what though? To the Dodgers' credit, it also everything is clicking for that team. Their organization, the player development's great. You also see a lot of the guys on this team that weren't really anything before they went to the Dodgers. I've mentioned many times, I'm leading off as you just mentioned, Max Muncy wasn't much of anything with the Oakland A's before he went to the Dodgers. Chris Taylor wasn't much of anything with the Mariners. Justin Turner wasn't much of anything when he was with the Mets. Those guys just seem to click well with the Dodgers. Add on the stars they've traded for and signed the last couple of years. Add on the guys they've drafted for and developed in their system. It's just everything is clicking right for that team. So you kind of, they could be looked at as evil empire National League, but everything's clicked well for them, and they yeah, they're spending a few extra dollars than a lot of other teams, but a lot of the main nucleus of their team has been built internally, and I got to give them credit.
Right.
Yeah.
No, they've done an incredible job. So,
Yeah.
but you get to the point where somebody gets too good at something and it breaks the sport, then we're gonna have, there's gonna be changes eventually. So we'll see.
Yeah. The only other one I would add into the overall MLB trade deadline, just preposterous that the Rockies didn't trade Trevor Story. That they're going to get a comp pick for him, so they're going to get like the 32nd pick in the first round next year. Like they couldn't.
First hot take that I was wrong about.
They couldn't get something. They had to have gotten something better than that for a rental piece. I mean, just look at like what.
The only person they traded was Michael Givens. That's it. Not even John Gray, who could have been. You saw what they got. What pitchers were going for on the rental market. I mean, they could have gotten a top 10 prospect from somebody for Gray. I mean, that would have been a nice pickup for the Yankees. I think that would have been a nice rotation.
We'll get more to the Yankees. Once the MLB, if we want them to look into the Dodgers and the spending, they should pull one of the moves where they remove the GM from the Rockies. They pull what it's been done in the NBA before, and you say, listen, we're going to run this team because you people have no idea what you're doing. Like it is like just no clue what you're doing. The things that, for how sad as it must be for Cubs fans and Nationals fans, you set yourself up for the next 10 years. You brought in so many top guys, and are all of them going to pan out? No, but you're going to get some of them who will. They're going to lead you to the playoffs, and the Rockies are just going to get nothing and still be bad in the NL West, which doesn't look like they're slowing down. Yeah. Just perplexing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So feel bad for Trevor's Story. It sucks that he's got to do now 2 more months in the Mile High City. He himself was confused. He was like, why was I not traded? But anyway, we will move on from the trade deadline. We'll get into our bracket in a little bit. But before we do that, we're going to remind you that our show is sponsored by Sincerely Allie Studio, a good friend of Joe. Sincerely Allie Studio, established in 2020. They put together some beautiful scented candles, wine glasses, coffee mugs, and much more. Make sure to check out Allie's Etsy website at Sincerely Allie Studio, and follow at sincerely.allie on Instagram. And for all things for your self-care needs, Sincerely Allie. We have Joe Pugliese here with us on Savages in the Bronx for the first time. And Joe, we do a segment here on the show that we don't do often, but when we have a guest on, we like to try to get this out of the way. It's called Babe's Bracket. It is our bracket segment where we'll just discuss a Yankees-related topic, whether it has something to do with the active team or history. But we've been talking about the trade deadline, so I wanted to do a bracket on the biggest Yankee trade in history. So we got an 8-seed bracket here, and we're going to get things kicked off. And now we can – I don't know if you want to get into rules here. I'm just talking about – for me at least, I'm looking at – what is the most memorable trade in the history of the Yankees franchise? So we're going to get things going with our number 1 seed, and these are seeded. So our number 1 seed, and why not start Babe's bracket off with the man himself, Babe Ruth, 1920, more sold by the Boston Red Sox to the Yankees, but a trade nonetheless. And the most recent entry in our list, number 8, Giancarlo Stanton. Coming over from Miami. Of course, that was the big deal of the 2017 winter meetings. Stanton going to the Yankees, Stalin Castro going back in return with a couple of prospects. And at the time, Yankee fans like I were going crazy. Holy shit, they just got the NL MVP. This is nuts. It's going to be Stanton and Judge, and the Yankees are going to win every World Series after the fact. And it hasn't been that case at all. So Stanton, Babe Ruth, who do you got, Joe?
I mean, this is kind of an unfair, seeding, but it's got to be the Babe. I mean, you talk about probably the most significant ball player in the history of baseball, outside of maybe Jackie Robinson. He's the reason why baseball became a national pastime, and he was the guy. I mean, there's almost not a person who enjoys athletics in the world that doesn't know who Babe Ruth is. And that in of itself, all these years later is just, you can go to the old legends in each sport And the one name that stands the test of time, the oldest name that stands the test of time, is Babe Ruth. There are people who don't know who Jim Thorpe is in football, or some of the other guys in hockey that were Bobby Orr. A lot of people never heard of Bobby Orr. So I mean, Babe Ruth is such on the upper. He's on the Mount Rushmore of sports icons. And to think about the fact that he's done it over 100 years ago that this happened, and he's still, cited today as one of the greatest of all time, just goes to show you how impactful he was. So, I mean, it's unfortunate that this bracket is going to be dominated by that, but that's the truth.
It's true. Babe's the obvious answer. In fact, the Stanton trade, we've talked about it a few times. Actually, how it worked out, one of the worst trades the Yankees have made in a long time because of how it set them up. And a lot of the issues that we see with this team in 2021 come from that trade. The fact that Stanton is a right-handed hitter. The fact that he's playing right field tonight, but for a couple years now has just clogged up the DH spot, not allowing guys like Sanchez or Voit or Judge to get off days, at least off the field. They did get him at a bit of a discount because the Marlins ate some of the money. The natural selection that the Yankees would have went after is Bryce Harper, which would have, I think, changed the trajectory of where the Yankees are today. So obviously it's Babe, but the Stanton trade at the time, granted, was very exciting. I'm not taking that away. Hindsight's 2020, but boy, if that didn't happen, I think this team could have contended for a World Series at this point and would be in a much better shape right now than they are.
Yes, definitely would have been better structured. Babe Ruth, though, our number 1 seed, moving on to the next round. Our next set here, we got David Cone coming in as a number 4 seed. He was traded by the Blue Jays in 1995. The Yankees sent over Marty Jansen, Jason Jarvis, and Mike Gordon a deal. Of course, all 3 synonymous greats in baseball. Yeah, right. But great deal for the Yankees. David Cone coming in return, and another late 90s Yankee, Paul O'Neill, coming over from the Reds straight up for Roberto Kelly, which at the time was a very, I felt like a very even deal across the plate. But so O'Neill for Kelly in that one. So what we got here, guys? O'Neill or David Cone, biggest trade?
This battle of the Yes Network booth here. What do you think, Joe?
This one's tough because I think they're seated pretty appropriately. I mean, Cone had his moments, including, no hitter, or was it a perfect game?
It was a perfect game, Joe. I was there.
Perfect game.
Magical.
Perfect
Me,
game.
Anthony Rizzo were hanging out, watching David Cohen's perfect game. I'm going to tell the story that he was next to me, and we talked about how, in the future, he's like our age. We could have been friends.
Yeah, and he became the first baseman of the Yankees, and you became the first baseman of my softball team.
Yeah, we both succeeded.
Great job, guys.
So yeah, both of these guys had great moments. I think I tend to lend myself to O'Neill a little bit more because he was there, for a significant larger portion of time. He doesn't have the history of also being a New York Met prior to becoming a Yankee, even though, Cone's career was better with the Yankees, at least from the big moments perspective. And O'Neill was, at the end of the day, part of 4 championships. And that was something that he's always going to be remembered for. He was their cornerstone first baseman. A lot of people still think that he was the best hitter on that team, on those groups of teams, that he was kind of that cornerstone in the middle of that lineup. A lot of people still want his number retired, or it's shadow retired at this point. So I'll tend to lean towards O'Neill just because I feel he has a bigger persona and a bigger legacy in the Bronx than Cone does, who has to split a little bit of that legacy between Queens and the Bronx.
I will give you that part of it. Both were on the 4 championship teams in the 90s and 2000. So they do both share the rings. O'Neill's there earlier, I think, and then I think was there a year later. So he was there longer. Rich, I don't remember if we had this argument on this show where it was, but I had the hot argument that Paul O'Neill might be a more beloved Yankee than even Derek Jeter, just in the fans' eyes, because of the Warrior, because of him being a psycho and all of that. Granted, Jeter's a better player, but I think Yankee fans relate and love Paul O'Neill more. But I'll take Cone here. Let's get Rich involved to break this tie.
Damn it! I was hoping not to get involved.
But I usually feel the same way, but I
was actually more with Joe with this one. I liked his take on him splitting his legacy between the Yankees and the Mets here. I think O'Neill will go down. Yes, and he was a great Cincinnati Red. I think he goes down as more of a known New York Yankee, even now in the World Series championships. 5-time All-Star, 4 of which with the Yanks. So, and he won a batting title with the Yankees. So, I'm going with O'Neill here, and that number needs to be worn. I'm so happy fucking Joey Gallo pulled his balls out of fucking A-Rod's purse and just took his number from it. It was fantastic.
You're fired.
I was so happy
Get
to
off
see
the
it.
show.
So I just need somebody to wear number 21, and that would just make my day.
We've talked about that too. It needs to be the right guy to do it, just because of what that jersey comes with.
Right. And I'm telling you, I think that man's going to be Mr. Dominguez. I say of all the guys who should just do it, give it to Jason Dominguez. Why not? Put all the pressure on him anyway. Fuck it. Just take number 21 to a rain of boos on your first strikeout and your first at bat. Oh, I would love it. All right, we move on. Next matchup here. This is Tom. I know you're going to love this one. At our number 3 seed, Alex Rodriguez, acquired in 2004 by the Texas Rangers for Alfonso Soriano and Joaquin Arias. And then we have Roger Maris, our number 6 seed. And he was brought on by the Kansas City Athletics at the time. His deal, I have to actually pull that up because I don't remember the other component of that. I want to get it. Hold up. Who was the deal? Oh, it was a 7-player deal. Holy shit. So it was him with Kent Hadley, Joe Demastri, for Marv Thornberry, Norm Syburn, Hank Bauer, and Don Larson. Don Larson also going in that deal. Look at that. New things you learn. Maris or A-Rod. Joe, who do you got?
Another good one, Rich. This is one of those where you have a guy in Maris who set a record that lasted almost 40-something years in baseball. Many people consider it still to this day to be the legitimate record. Mm-hmm. But at the time and during his run with the Yankees, he was treated so poorly by the fans because he was breaking the first guy on this list's record and what they did to him, and the fact that he was seen as this guy who was taking Mickey Mantle's rightful spot away from Mickey. It's really tough. And then you have A-Rod, who has a bigger legacy, who probably has a bigger legacy with the Yankees in terms of numbers and great seasons. I mean, I think Maris was only there 4 years, and A-Rod was there, I think, 10. But in A-Rod's case, he lives in infamy because he deserves it, whereas Maris lived in infamy because he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the fans couldn't get past the fact that he was going after the two legends. A-Rod is a superstar no matter where you go. Everybody knows who A-Rod is. It's close, and I know it's almost blasphemous to say because a lot of people dislike A-Rod, but sometimes it's better to live in infamy than amenity. I think A-Rod takes it slightly because I think two reasons. The home run record is no longer really relevant, at least in the single season, even though Maris's legacy lasted longer. And I think A-Rod was just such a lightning rod for the Yankees and defined a good 10 years of what the Yankees were. I mean, from the late 2000s all the way up until his contract expired through the suspension. I mean, we were wondering, the world of the Yankees always revolved around what A-Rod did and where he was going to be. So I would say it's almost blasphemous just because of the longevity and all that surrounded it. I would go with A-Rod.
I do think this one is actually pretty close. And Joel, the things you said about Maris, the stories of that year of his hair falling out as he was going after the record, it really is pretty horrible the way the fans treated him for a multitude of reasons. If you look at their stats, both won 2 MVPs with the Yankees. Maris playing 7 years with the Yankees. A-Rod played 12 years with the Yankees. A-Rod winning 1 World Series. Maris, I believe, winning 3 World Series with the Yankees. So, granted, A-Rod played 5 years more, but if you look at the things you're kind of graded on of being the best player, in the sport and winning titles, Maris, because with the titles and the home run record, has a lot to argue there. But I do think it is A-Rod. If we're also just talking impact at the time, I think some of that's a factor in here. And the A-Rod trade, we were talking earlier about how the Padres felt about, almost getting Scherzer and going to the Dodgers. For those of you who forget, A-Rod was a Red Sox. He was traded to the Red Sox. He only didn't go there because his I don't know if he's a Boris guy. I assume he is because he gets paid a lot of money. He was willing to renegotiate his contract so the Red Sox could afford him at the time. And the union and his agent, knocked it down and said, no, we're not going to set that precedent. You're not going to take a pay cut to get traded. That's why that deal fell through and he ended up a Yankee. And that set up, really then that also just added so much more fuel to the fire of that rivalry through the mid 2000s. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's A-Rod.
Yeah, and I think also if you wanted to go back in time here, in 2004, you're trading for Alex Rodriguez, who just won the MVP in the American League with the Texas Rangers. To 1959, you weren't taking 60 home run Roger Maris. 60 home run Roger Maris was on the Yankees. Roger Maris, prior to his trade from the Kansas City Athletics, he hit 16 home runs, which is funny because it's like literally the reciprocal of 61, which I think mathematically is kind of hilarious. But I'm not going to be a nerd here. A-Rod, unanimous vote. He's moving on. Our last matchup here in the first round. Can't believe we're still in the first round here. But Roger Clemens, our number 2 seed, traded by the Blue Jays in 1999. And we go to the 80s here. 1984, Rickey Henderson coming over from the Oakland A's as our number 7 seed. Clemens or Rickey Henderson? Henderson, a Hall of Famer. Roger Clemens might be a Hall of Famer. We're not going to get into that controversy, or will we? Joe, who do you got?
I mean, everybody loves Rickey Henderson, but I mean, how many people remember Rickey Henderson, as a Yankee when it's all said and done? Mm-hmm. Played 4.5 seasons. Rickey's kind of a guy where Rickey did his own thing and he was him. Roger Clemens coming over, that kind of signify, the Yankees are known as the big bad empire and who better to be the face of that in your era than Roger Clemens. I mean, he was a mean guy. He was a jerk. He was a great pitcher, but all the things that came with him, contributed to the championship runs, the controversies with Piazza and the steroids, and then the retirement and coming back out of retirement to take Corey Lytle's spot in the rotation. I mean, everything that Clemens was in terms of his career with the Yankees was just always, much like A-Rod, it centered around him sometimes. And part of these big superstars coming to the Yankees, I think, is kind of what made some of the guys like Jeter and Williams and those guys able to do what they did for so long, was because the attention was never on those guys. Mm-hmm. The attention was on them at the end when their career was over and everybody got to reflect and say, these guys were really what made the Yankees click. But during the time, it was always Clemens. It was always A-Rod. It was always, Reggie Jackson at the time. And if the Yankees aren't getting a big lightning rod superstar, are they really the Yankees? So I got to go Clemens here.
I think it's a lot of really good points. And I think, as you were going through that, Clemens was kind of what turned the Yankees a bit into what they've been in for the last now I guess 20 years, if we were to go back to 99 to 25 since the 96 title, because 96 you figured it had been so long. And listen, I think at the time, granted, a lot of us were kids. It wasn't, the big bad Yankees won the World Series. It was like, it's cool. The Yankees won the World Series again. It's been a long time. 98, then the most dominant team, setting setting the record and then having it broken, right? The overall record, whatever, but a lot of those were homegrown guys or kind of smartly traded for guys, a Paul O'Neill, a Tino Martinez, those types of David Cone. Clemens kind of signaled, okay, now we're going after these big guys, which then led to the other big signings that would come, of the Giambis and such. So I do think it is Clemens. I think he had a huge impact on that late part of the run. And Clemens.
I'm sorry that I look like a bobblehead, but like the points you guys are making are just like, I can't disagree with them. Clemens, moving on to the next round. Also, shout out and congratulations to Espo. He did win the Espo pick of the day as the Marlins have a 5-3 lead. The man has finally done it. So Espo, if you're listening, congratulations. But man, that's going to be a good conversation to have with him on the next episode leading off. But we move on to the semifinals here on Savages in the Bronx. Our number 1 seed, Babe Ruth, up against the number 4 seed, Paul O'Neill, for the greatest Yankees acquisition via trade in history. Joe, take it away.
Do we even have to discuss it?
Nope, we don't. No. We actually don't. We should just keep moving because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Babe Ruth, moving on. Tom, you agree?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Even though you think Paul O'Neill is the most popular Yankee of all time.
The specific word is beloved. Beloved Yankee of those times.
I don't know. That's a hard. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
That was probably true, 10 years ago.
I mean, if you look at that, like our generation and the older people than us, if you ask my dad, he would probably like Paul O'Neill more, and he loved Derek Jeter, but just that again, we don't have to get into it, but it's I just think it's an interesting argument.
I think now it's Jeter. I think before Jeter and O'Neill, I think it was Don Mattingly, and I still think to this day that Mattingly, because quick story, I was interning at the stock exchange when Mattingly walked in the building stopped. And and if you want a biggest collection of Yankee baseball fans that are, 40, 50 years old, go to the New York Stock Exchange trading floor. These guys, this was their hero.
Rich white dudes love the New York Yankees.
Yeah, and Don Mattingly was the poster child for that, and he's beloved because he retired right before they won. He went through all the pains and never got the reward. So I think there's a special place for Mattingly in Yankee fans' hearts.
And in my mind, O'Neill is the spiritual successor to Mattingly.
I think you're right. I think that was that way their replacement for him. So.
We need to clip that. Rich white guys love the Yankees.
They sure do.
Moving forward. All righty. Well, Babe Ruth moves on. We have Roger Clemens up against Alex Rodriguez here in the semis. What do you guys think?
I love this matchup because, we could talk about pure championships and you're going to give it to Clemens. But look, we just talked about what makes the Yankees, and that's accepting the fact that you're the evil empire and bringing in your Darth Vader, right? That's what gets you that's what the Dodgers are embracing now. They're turning around and like, all right, we're going to be the bad guys. We're going to go get the Trevor Bauers and the Scherzers and everybody else. And we're going to do it. And we're going to sell our soul to win. And that's what made the Yankees the Yankees. And these two guys, it's almost like, you have that old outage that it was Ruth to Gehrig to DiMaggio to Mantle. And you have that line of succession. But so in the Yankees, in the evil empire era of the Yankees, it was Clemens to A-Rod. And I think in this particular case, Clemens started it, but I got to go with A-Rod because he spans longer, and nothing kind of signified the end of that evil empire mentality until A-Rod was done and they handed it over to the Judge and Torres and Sanchez era, where they weren't getting the big bad guy until Cole just came along. But they weren't getting the big bad guy. They were going to build from within and restart as if they were in the early 90s before they went to this. So I got to go with A-Rod just because he exacerbated it and extended it, and it really ended at him at the moment.
I think it's a lot of great points. I think if Susan Wallman saying Roger Clemens is in George Steinbrenner's box was about the trade, that might put Roger Clemens over, because that is an iconic moment that I remember listening to live on the radio. Just, I don't know why I was listening. I was in the car or something, but I remember that Roger Clemens is in George Steinbrenner's box. It is hilarious. But that was when he came back out of retirement. Yes. So I do think A-Rod, for the longevity of what the trade led to, I think it does have to be A-Rod.
I love it. Great matchup. And yes, the Susan Wallman call is probably the greatest Yankee moment to not happen on the field.
For those people who hate John and Susan, if you can't just appreciate that, and even just for the comedy of it, it is so funny.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Announcing he is back. Roger Clemens.
Oh my God. What is she said something before that. I need to look it up after. It's like of all the tremendous things.
Of all the
dramatic things.
I think it's of all the traumatic things.
Roger Clemens,
to be fair, badass moment. You show up at the game. People don't know. I guess maybe some beat reporters do, but this is before Twitter. Like the Yankee fans didn't know, and to just be in middle of the game, not before the game, middle of the game.
Right.
Hey guys, I give a thumbs up. I'm back. Like,
this is just the WWE fans. It was so wrestling because it's like the WWE fans. It's like the surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble, the showing up and the fans going nuts. But yes, Roger Clemens moving on in the bracket up against this man, the Babe Ruth, our number one seed of the aptly named Babe's bracket, being sold from the Red Sox in 1920. And another former Red Sox, but this time he was coming over from the Blues.
It was A-Rod. I thought we did A-Rod.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Alex Rodriguez, who was about to be a Boston Red Sox, and at the last minute was not. So yes, you're right. Sorry. That is A-Rod up against Babe Ruth here in the finals. Joe, take it away.
I mean, listen, I could try to make a case for A-Rod because, he was the best player in the sport. He was, until the steroid allegation, I mean, he was going to be going down as one of the greatest of all time. I mean, when he went to the Yankees, he was on pace to break every record in the book. He was on pace to be the new home run king. He played a premium position that Ruth never did. And it just kind of seemed the way A-Rod was and kind of always in the wrong place at the wrong time sometimes, that ended. That being said, at the end of the day, Babe Ruth is still Babe Ruth. And if you're going to make a Mount Rushmore of one player from each sport, Babe is the Babe, and there's nothing else you can say. He is as much a part of baseball as any player can ever possibly be. And like I said, except for maybe Jackie Robinson, I don't think there's anybody else on his level in terms of impact to the game, and that's why. And it started when he got traded to the Yankees. He wasn't Babe Ruth until he was in the Yankees.
Yeah, and the last Babe's bracket, Babe was upset in the finals in the all-time Yankee home run derby, losing to Mickey Mantle. But it's not going to happen again this time. I do think it has to be the Babe. But I like Joe's points there. If A-Rod, now granted, we don't know. I still don't think we'll ever really know what part of A-Rod was clean and what was not clean. But if he was clean all the way up until he became a Yankee and was clean the whole time, and if by being clean, he was still able to play until he ended up retiring. Was he 40 or 39? He didn't leave at 35, 36. He would have broken the home run record. He would have been the clean face of baseball after the steroid era. I think this argument would be very close if A-Rod did that without being tainted. But sadly, that is not what happened. The story of A-Rod falling is movie worthy kind of stuff. But it does have to be the Babe.
And yes, and I agree. And the one note I'll make here that wasn't made before, it started the greatest rivalry in all of sports. The Red Sox and Yankees the Red Sox-Yankee rivalry started with this trade. And without this trade, you wouldn't have some of the craziest matchups we've ever seen, and the heat and the hate between the two cities. The Babe is the winner of his own bracket here. Babe Ruth, the greatest trade in Yankee history. Did you have any doubt? And that's brought to you again by our great sponsor, Sincerely Allie Studio. So good stuff, guys. Joe, if you just joined us, Joe Pugliese, WCLH FM, Staten Island Joe and the Franiac Show way back in the day. But you can follow him on Twitter at JRPugs. He has great takes on baseball, on sports, on politics. So give him a nice follow because he deserves a few fans and a few likes and a few retweets. So Joe is here with us. And Joe, you've seen the show before, and normally how we end with our guests on every show with a little segment called Guess the Graph. Now, Guess the Graph is our bit where Tom's going to reveal his one of his prestigious autograph bowls that's right behind him over his right shoulder. If he wants to give us a quick Vanna White right there. Yes, sir. Right over there. But yes, he's going to show us one of his balls. Not his balls. That would be disgusting. I got kicked off Twitch. But one of his autographs, he'll definitely show us. So here we go, Tom. And usually they have a theme to it. And I have to assume that this one has to do with the trade deadline, if I'm not mistaken.
You know what? That would have been smart. I really should have thought that through more. But it doesn't. We do have a white smudge on this ball, though. I did have to kind of erase this player's number, which would have made this really difficult.
Okay. So has nothing to do with the trades. Was this player traded to the Yankees, though?
He was not. No.
Okay.
He was not. And is a current Major League player.
Oh, okay. You haven't had many of those on this bracket.
We try to change it up at times.
I see a J in the front. So, at least from what...
I'm going to be honest. I also see a J, but that is not a J.
That's not a J.
No.
Did this player formerly play for the Yankees?
Yes.
Okay. He's an active player in baseball.
Active player in baseball. Former Yankee. No longer a Yankee.
Okay.
Let's see. What else can we do? This player has played now. What do we got, Joe?
I'm going to take a guess here. I'm going to go Didi Gregorius.
What an unbelievable job by Joe. This is
really
Didi. This is Didi Gregorius.
Phenomenal job.
Really phenomenal. Like I said, I don't know where you're getting. I don't know where you're getting Didi Gregorius out of any of this. Now that I look at it more, see, I've always seen this as like an easy one to tell it's Didi Gregorius because under the white smudge it's an 18. But now that I look at this more, there is nothing in there that makes me think Didi Gregorius.
I kind of went from the former Yankee still playing, and who would be a former Yankee that's still playing that you would want their signature of? I
got some ones. I have some ones back there. You're like, wow, you got that person sign a ball. I'm like, well, at the time, maybe.
It is well timed though, because his signature does look like the fucking Olympic rings.
Yeah, that's what we're going for.
So good stuff, Tom, on picking out the ball. But great stuff, Joe, on getting it right. So yeah, we had a guest to get the guess the graph correctly. So Joe's prize, he wins back another appearance on Savage in the Bronx. Congratulations, Joe. Good stuff.
Next time
Joe, it's been a pleasure. We enjoyed having you on. Of course, I enjoyed having you on leading off as well. And have a big day coming up this weekend, my friend. So congratulations. I hope
Good to
it's
get a
a
break.
great time. And I know it's going to be a great time because I'm going to be there. So,
Glad to have it.
Are you sure you want that, Joe?
I
You
don't
can
know.
still
I go back and forth.
You can still uninvite him.
Yeah.
well, if I can't go, Tom will take my spot, I guess. But Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. And hey, make sure to give Joe a follow at JR Pugs on Twitter.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
You got it, Joseph.
See you, Joe.
All right, Joe Pugliese. Pleasure having him on. And again, let's give you guys a quick special announcement that we did announce previously on one of the extra innings episodes that next week's show will not be live. So that's unfortunate for you hardcore Savages in the Bronx fans. But we will be back on August the 16th for episode number 20, the big 2-0. Big accomplishment for us, I guess, because I just, it felt like yesterday that we started with episode number 1 and we're already going to number 20 in a couple of weeks' time. So, of course, we'll get into how the Yankees are doing. Obviously, today it's not going well. Andrew Heaney giving up 4 home runs to the Orioles.
4 solo homers. One of them was a bit of a shorter one, even though it was the left field. It wasn't really tanked. The other ones were pretty well hit balls. The Yankees did fight back to get 1 in the 5th. And now we got the O's got 1 on, no out. So not looking great so far. You wish they would come out looking better after the big road, the big kind of end to the road trip. The excitement with the new guys. But we still got some time left. The Orioles are still the Orioles. So we'll see.
We shall see. But anyway, that'll do it for tonight's episode of Savages in the Bronx. We went almost a full hour. That Joe can really talk, right? But good bracket, good guess the graph segment, and good talk on the trade deadline. But we'll see you guys in a couple weeks' time. Like to thank you all for coming out and joining our program on Twitch, following us on Twitter, subscribing to us on YouTube, and we also appreciate your support, family, friends, peers, coworkers, softball teammates, everybody. Maybe there's somebody from the Yankees that listened in that enjoy the show. And we thank you guys. We love you guys. But we'll see you here in 2 weeks' time on another edition of Savages in the Bronx. Take care.